Okay, so I'm like so behind on doing a review for season 1 because I'm like so busy on catching up on other shows, taking classes, spending time with my girlfriend, and work. But finally, I finished the first season of DuckTales. And I must say, this is probably my favorite cartoon today, which isn't saying much because Nickelodeon and most certainly Cartoon Network don't give me much to enjoy. Even though I'm not a huge fan of Disney XD currently, I'll give them a lot of credit for handling a reboot properly. And even if you're an oldie and not a fan of this series, you can at least say it has effort put into it. And that's more than I can say for certain networks out there. Now, the reason I'm doing this review is because I made a video giving my quick thoughts on the show itself, and thought I could have given a much more in-depth review. Now, I'm a firm child of the 90s. Yes, the decade before the new millennium was instrumental in shaping up my consciousness, and that including good television. While I was a fan of shows like Batman the Animated Series, Ren and Stimpy, Power Rangers, Dragon Ball Z, and Daria, one of the shows I remembered later on during my preteen years was DuckTales when they reran the show on Toon Disney. And it was a pretty good show, but this reboot definitely lives up to the original. So when it was announced a few years back that a reboot for a show would be happening with a new animation style and theme, you could understand me being a little skeptical. When you think reboot of a much beloved property, especially from Disney, you automatically think disaster. Sorry people. DuckTales 2017, as it's being affectionately called, is actually a damn good reboot. And in some ways, I enjoyed this a tad bit more than the original. But that's just me. I just think it adds and improves on many elements that the original show lacked, such as a bit more characterization on some of the leads, a stronger narrative focus, and even an arc of overriding mysteries of a sorts to solve. It isn't trying to entirely replicate the original show was, but more stay true to the spirit of what the show was at its core while trying something new. Add a great cast of voice actors in there, including the 10th Doctor himself, David Tennant playing the titular Stooge. And this show was not only a winner from its opening story, but it has started to grow. Fans of many shows are coming to this one in many doughs, and I'm even starting to see toys for this one all over the place, which is unheard of for a Disney Channel animated series. So what are my personal thoughts? I absolutely love this show. From minute 1 of the first episode, I was not only interested but invested. Rather than give a full-on review of each episode of the first season, something many of other reviewers have done and better, I wanted to give a rating for each episode and talk the best and worst. If there was one fault I've ever had with the old series of DuckTales, is that the show was a bit too lighthearted. It was a show that was a classic, memorable and enjoyable, sure, but there were never any real dramatic episodes that ever changed the status quo or messed things up too permanently outside of the opening arc that brings the group together. DuckTales 2017 throws that out the window, not only adding in several fascinating arcs and mysteries that grab you from the get-go, but adding in a sense of drama way to them to make you actually give a damn and become more invested. Last Crash is the penultimate episode before the series finale that not only proves the drama and way that can be added in the show, but it does so in a surprising way while keeping the true characters and the adventure. And that's not an understatement either. The big reveal of this episode packs the immersive wallop that will shock you and leave you breathless. It not only sets up the finale, but it explains so much of the character quirks, story details, and other things that you notice throughout the season, and suddenly things fall into place much more, putting practically the entire season in a whole new light. Not only that, but it's still a fun episode with the big reveal of a dangerous situation, interesting dramatics, and several action-packed moments that feel big but also very personal. While the impetus for the situation is a little bit on the nose, it succeeds in building tension, paying it off, and leaving us on an emotional, devastating cliffhanger that the old series could never pull off. It really shows how much care and love has gone into this new rendition, while still keeping true to what made DuckTales so memorable in the first place. This may not be the most fun, the most adventurous, or even the most memorable episode in the season, but for what it represents in its changes and powers, it's certainly the most important. Then we get to the low point of the show, which is the bad. While even the low points of its first season of DuckTales were at least memorable, there was one episode for me that, while nice in what it did to update the story from the original series, just didn't land at all. The Terraformians as a creation were never exactly popular or the most creative in the show, and their episode in the classic DuckTales was not only one of my least favorites, but also one of the hardest to believe even for an animated family show. Terra not only takes it upon itself to update with a new situation, but also try to make them creepy, which they just aren't. Yeah. Its attempts are certainly admirable, and there are things about it that I like, such as the team continuing to grow closer, and especially when it starts setting up the Magica de Spell thread. But the jokes don't really land. The arc with Huey didn't quite work as well as it could have. And compared to other episodes that do this better, it doesn't quite manage to stick the landing of the group dramatic and reasoning to save the day. It's certainly not the worst piece of television I've ever seen, and this is miles above what a lot of family shows can do, but compared to the rest of the season, this doesn't really have much ground to stand on. Now, Season 1 of DuckTales 2017 pulled a lot of surprises that I wasn't expecting to see, such as characterization of key players that we never got to see before as reference to other shows like Tailspin, but none of these moments came as big or as earth-shattering to me as the reappearance of Darkwing Duck, and how he interrogates into this universe. It was the perfect little addition that added a bit more teeth to the DuckTales universe, and even gave me hope for a sequel with Darkwing Duck. While it certainly stumbles in places as is a typical first season of a new show, DuckTales 2017 is what a reboot can and should do. It reinvents, updates, and changes things around while also staying true to the nostalgia and fun of the original, and keeping its family/Disney roots all in the best ways. With a great cast, colorful comic book-like style animation, lots of laughs and tons of fun adventures, kids and adults simply can't go wrong with this show, and I couldn't be happier with it. And people just assume that I just blindly hate any cartoon reboot. Well, if you do a reboot right, then there's really nothing to complain about. Now, time to catch up to Season 2. DuckTales gets a 9 out of 10. This is Red Wolf signing out, and I'll see you next time. Peace.